second, did Intel just beat AMD Ryzen for the best gaming and production CPU in 2026? And are RAM prices actually coming down? Yes, they are. Welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. We're going to take a look at all the best gaming CPUs in 2026 to buy for March and the best production CPUs in March 2026 as well. We're going to go through current pricing, the benchmarks on the new Intel CPUs, and RAM prices actually coming down. Then we'll go through the best CPUs in every budget level. If you get value out of this video, please give it a like or subscribe for more cool PC content. Let's jump into it. This video is sponsored by VIP SCD Key. Say goodbye to crazy expensive Windows licenses and that terrible Activate Windows watermark. Right now, use the links in the video description, head over to VIP SCD Key and get a Windows 11 OEM license for a great price. Pick your product license, then use the PC Builder discount code PC25 for an additional 30% off. Go to the activation settings on your PC, put in the code, and boom! Windows is fully licensed for a crazy low price. And they have Microsoft Office licenses too. Use the links in the video description. The big news for March, of course, Intel launching their Core Ultra 200S Plus CPUs as their Arrow Lake refresh and giving AMD a run for their money and actually adding some competition to the space. What is going on here? We'll go through, of course, whether or not these are the best gaming CPUs later in the video, but this is the Ultra 5 25K Plus and the Ultra 7 270K Plus, $199 for the Ultra 5, $299 for the 270K. Now those are significantly cheaper than their predecessors, the 245K and the 265K. However, I will say the 245K you can get quite a bit cheaper right now, and the 265K is about $250, but they gave it the 13th gen treatment. Remember, between 12th and 13th gen, Intel basically pumped the architecture up, they jacked more power into it, and they tuned things up, and they got significantly more performance out of what were essentially kind of almost the same CPUs. I think they've done that again. If we go ahead and take a look at gaming benchmarks here, this is the Tom's Hardware review of the 270K Plus. I'll link it in the video description. They go through not just this, but productivity and other kinds of benchmarks as well. Look at that. Basically, the 270K Plus comes in above the 14700K, which is kind of what we expected a couple of years ago when the 265K launched, but beating parts like the 9700X that currently go for more, although AMD just cut some prices. We'll go through CPU prices in just a moment. Look at the 250K. The 245K was a terrible gaming CPU. It had serious problems with a lot of games, and they seem to have fixed that and given us like an i5 14600K like gaming CPU for about $200. Games like basically a Ryzen 9600X or even 9700X at times. Of course, then we look at productivity benchmarks. This is an area where Arrow Lake CPUs originally, they did really well in Cinebench, and then they would fall down in other areas due to, well, I believe is very high tile-to-tile latency that was impacting their overall DRAM latency, which I think they fixed in this. And we can see, yeah, again, the 270K, look at that, crushes everything in Cinebench, which is a synthetic all-core workload, even the 9950X and the 285K, which Intel, you really should stop selling, I think. But then, of course, let's go to other things. Actually, it doesn't do too badly. Now, it doesn't perform as well as the 9900X in the open image denoise benchmark. If we look at V-Ray 6, it does all of a sudden pop up above a 7950X, kind of just beat by the 9950X, and significantly better than their previous offering. So I think that we've got a winner on our hands. Of course, some of you are probably saying, yeah, Jason, but I'm sure Intel wants super fast memory. They say the sweet spot's about 8,000 speed. What do they want? CU DIMMs? How much is this RAM actually going to cost me? The good news is that TechSpot, aka Hardware Unboxed, actually tested out 3 different games with 3 different kits of RAM, the 250K Plus, and they found basically 8200 CL40, 7200 CL34, and 6000 CL30, which I know is still somewhat expensive. I wish they had tested one more kit in there, like 6000 CL36 or 38, because that's generally the lowest price kits these days for DDR5 RAM, especially for 16 gigabyte variants. But they basically found, what is that, like 3 or 4% in Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered. They found about 5% in Marvel Rivals, and they found almost no loss whatsoever in Rainbow Six Siege. So that's pretty good news. And then taking a quick look at power consumption on the Tech Power Up review of both CPUs, which I'll link in the video description. The Core Ultra 5 250K looks pretty good in terms of the gaming. I was almost like, wow, it's only 10% more power than 9600X. Maybe we could use a budget tower air cooler with this CPU. And then I took a look at the multi-thread and said, oh, no. It basically can soak up as much power as a 9800X3D under all core workloads. I would definitely recommend at least a dual tower cooler, but you can usually pick those up for about $30, not that expensive. And then of course, for the 270K plus, this is gonna drink quite a bit more power. It's about as much power as the 285K from the previous launch, and kind of comes in around the 9950X3D here in terms of the gaming. And then of course, if we just turn this thing loose on multi-threaded performance, we're actually gonna scroll down a little bit here. It's not that far off from the 14900K, yikes, at 248 watts, probably closer to the 7950X, not quite as power efficient as the 9950X, which only soaks about 200 watts. So for this, I would definitely recommend a beefy air cooler or go liquid cooling. So what are RAM prices doing this month? The good news is they're actually improving. RAM prices are getting better across the board, except the one category that maybe most of you really want. If you want RAM right now, remember, we went through this in our best builds video. You can get insane RAM combo deals that bring RAM pricing back to 2025 before the crisis if you grab RAM combo deals, both 16 gigabyte and 32 gigabyte DDR4 and DDR5 combos out there. I'll leave links to the Newegg ones in the video description. I'll leave a link to the spreadsheet that's global retailers that are offering some of those, so you can check those deals out to see if they're a good deal for you. But if you're just looking to buy RAM a la carte and you don't want to take my advice, the good news is you're going to save some money over last month. On DDR4 RAM, the cost of a 32 gigabyte kit came down $20 and the 16 gigabyte kits came down about $5. Here's my bellwether kit for 16 gigabytes, was $135 last month. That's come down, that's nice to see. And then here's my bellwether kit, 32 gigabyte, has come down to $210. I love to see prices come down. Then we've got DDR5 16 gigabyte kits have come down $20 from last month. Love to see that. And right now you can pick up a number of different kits for anywhere about $210 up to $230. Again, big price decrease over the $250 we were seeing last month. And I'm occasionally seeing things hit $199. Those kits are then selling out pretty quickly, so I didn't list them in the price, but you can find a deal right now, which you couldn't find last month. Unfortunately, for those of you looking for a 32 gigabyte kit, the price is pretty much has not moved whatsoever. And I know that those are the ones that everyone's in big demand right now. Fingers crossed, because the Chinese Lunar New Year has been over now for a month. And this is typically the time we see inventory start to pick back up, because the supply chain disruption kind of trickled out and now we're getting more and more supply. So hopefully these prices will continue to come down. Jumping into Ryzen CPU pricing in March 2026, and we can see already some price cuts coming in because of Intel's CPUs. It looks like AMD's at least a little bit nervous there. We're going to skip over the Ryzen 5000 series CPUs, basically kind of unchanged from last month, but the 7600X, $20. They've cut $20 off the price, and that happened last night, or yesterday, I should say, after the reviews went live for the Core Ultra 5 250K. And the Ultra 7 270K, the 9600X mostly unchanged, as well as the 7700X. But if you look at pricing, for instance, for the 9700X, they cut about $15 off that, got to the same price, the 270K. I don't think it belongs there. I think it's still a little overpriced. We'll talk about that. And then the 9800X 3D got a nice price cut down to $419. And remember, the 9000 series X3D CPUs are all coming with the free Crimson Desert game as well, so you can get that for a $70 value. Right now, you can take that into account. We look a little bit further down the stack here, 9950X 3D. Most of the rest of the stack is unchanged. Jumping over to Intel CPU pricing in March 2026, not a big change here. Yes, 12th, 13th, and 14th gen continue to vanish from the market. That's because they can use DDR4 RAM, which is cheaper, and so all the pre-built makers are buying those CPUs up in mass to basically use in pre-builts with like an RTX 5060 or 5070 kind of style GPU, where they can get away with the DDR4 CPU, and that's why we're seeing the prices kind of go bananas. I will say there's one deal out there right now if you're a budget gamer and you want to put something together. Right now, Intel has this really great combo on for the 12600KF. For $169, you get a $70 power supply, and this power supply is worth roughly $70, I would say. It's a C-tier rated one. Again, great for a budget build. Basically makes the CPU $100, even if you have to throw on a $20 cooler. That's only $120 for a pretty high performance gaming CPU at the budget end, so you can take advantage of that. I'll link it below. But then if we look at like the Ultra 5 and Ultra 7 pricing and where these CPUs are hitting, the 265K is already down at $250. And the 245K is already down at 175. So they're already cheaper than the 250K and 270K plus CPUs. And I'm kind of wondering, and we'll maybe see this in just a moment, should Intel have come in at those lower price points? All right, let's jump into the best gaming CPU in March 2026 and the best production CPU in March 2026. If you're not familiar with how we do this, we basically take the total platform price, we take the cost of the CPU, the cost of the RAM, the motherboard, the cooler, we add it up, we get a platform cost, we divide it by its gaming score, which is normalized back to a Ryzen 5600, and we get a price to performance for both gaming, and we've got a separate tab here for production. For production, we use 32 gigabyte kits, and for gaming, we use 16 gigabyte kits. You can add $100 in, but it doesn't really affect the stack ranking, even if you want to get 32 gigabytes. This spreadsheet is available, linked in the video description. If you want to go in here, if you want to change things up to different motherboards, different cooler configurations, or put in your local pricing, you can do that. Let's jump to the best budget gaming CPU in March 2026. So this is where the total platform price is $500 or less. So these are systems you're going to target either like $800 to $1,000, maybe about a $1,200 price point, depending on the kind of GPU you're looking for. No surprise here, the Ryzen 5500, super cost efficient. I mean, just kind of crushes everything else, except I will say that 12600K, if you're able to pick up the deal that I just showed you, that would basically make that CPU $100, and that would be very competitive with the 5500. On top of that, that'll use up to PCIe Gen 5 for the GPU slot. Remember, the Ryzen 5500 is locked to PCIe Gen 3. It's a different architecture than the 5600X, for instance. Outside of that, you could, of course, look at like a 12th, 13th, or 14th Gen i3. Those aren't terrible value. However, they're a little weak for gaming. I have seen some combo deals out there with the 5800 XT if you want something with a little bit more punch to it, including the motherboard and RAM for about $400 or $393. You could check that out. Otherwise, I think you're either going to go relatively budget here with like the 5500, you're going to grab a deal with the 12600K, or consider moving up because some of those combo deals that we're seeing for AM5 CPUs aren't that far off. Jumping into the best mid-range production CPU in March 2026 with a multi-core scores 170 or greater, and I've moved up the price to $1,000 for two reasons. One is I upgraded all the motherboards to Z series or X series motherboards with 4 M.2s. Feel like that's kind of basic for production systems. And then the second one is I know people keep asking, so I felt like some of the CPUs were getting filtered out and people couldn't see what they ranked. So does it surprise anybody 270K and the 250K are on the top of this list in price to performance, given that the 265K had already dominated it at its lower price? I'm not surprised. And I actually think the future upgradability argument here for like the Ryzen 9900X is a little bit lessened because we're mostly talking about multi-cores. X3D is a big jump up for gaming, and you can go 7600X to 9800 X3D and get a huge performance increase. I mean, isn't 9900X going to be that much slower than a 10900X? I really think if you do a 270K plus build right now, you're going to keep that build for probably 5 years, and you're going to skip over whatever AM5 has left to offer. You're going to skip to AM6, basically. You're probably going to skip Nova Lake, too. So I think there's a strong argument here if you're a production-focused user to get a 270K plus, and I would get that over the 250K. I'd spend the extra $100 for the CPU. That just makes all the sense in the world. I can see if you want to go Ryzen because you do want that future upgradability. 9900X does look like under $1,000. It would definitely make some sense. Jumping over the best mid-range gaming CPU in March 2026. So this is where the gaming score is 125 or greater and the total platform price is $700 or less. And I haven't changed the gaming platform prices, by the way. And I got to tell you, a little disappointed in the 250K here and Intel's offering just because they really should have priced this around $149. If they had priced it closer to the 7600X, it might make something of an argument. It's a decent hybrid CPU right now. I think we're seeing that for sure. If you're mostly production oriented and you also want to play some games, it's a great CPU to go ahead and buy. But honestly, I would put together a Ryzen 7600X system right now, because in a couple of years' time, even if you're bottlenecked with like a 5070 Ti or 9070 XT, slightly CPU bottlenecked, I should say, you're going to drop in an X3D CPU in the future. You know you are, right? You got that option. You don't have the option with a 250K plus. So I think if you're somebody who wants to put together a 250K plus, I would also be somebody who does a lot of like professional level production work. That's what would justify the overall cost. Otherwise, I think Intel needs to cut prices there. If you're just looking to put together a great gaming system, I'd go with the 7600X, possibly the 9600X if they cut the price on that a little bit. To me, the 7500X3D is kind of interesting because you do get stronger gaming performance, although you're spending quite a bit more money here. Kind of hard not to just find your way to 7800X3D, which is not, it's like $80 more than that, and it's very, very strong. The rest of these CPUs here are kind of in no man's land, and I would really stick to either the top Ryzen CPUs, or if you're a hybrid gamer, the 250K plus. Moving over to performance production in March 2026, before we get to high performance gaming, which I know you're waiting for. So we'll be really quick. There's no price limit on this. 250 is the multi-core score. No surprise, 270K plus dominates this, but remember, this is by price to performance. The highest performer is actually the 9950X3D here, down there at 402 on the multi-core score. It's also $400 more expensive for the build than the 270K plus. And you can take that into account because how much is future upgradability actually worth? That's the big question here. So if you want the best of the best right now and you want that future upgradability, I think AMD's got you covered and you don't mind spending the extra money, 9950X3D or 9950X, that's great. Also, they can handle AVX 512 workloads, whereas there's now AVX 512 support, my understanding, for the 270K plus or any of the Core Ultra CPUs out there. So for those folks are automatically going to go Ryzen them. However, I could see a lot of you building a 270K plus for $899 in terms of the platform price, saving yourself $400 and being great for the next 5 years, and then just jumping on either AM6 or whatever Intel has to offer at the time and skipping over the future upgrade path here. So honestly, I don't think you can go wrong. It's really going to be up to your preference. All right, let's jump into the best high performance gaming CPU in March 2026. So this is where the gaming score is 145 or greater and there's no price limit whatsoever. With the price cuts on the 9800X3D, and not even taking into account the Crimson Desert game bundle, by the way, the 9800X3D is back to the top of this list because it's gone down to $419, which is a 2 thumbs up price from me, basically. It is nice to see Intel finally crack into this with the Core Ultra CPUs, a CPU that can actually kind of compete and make the list, but I just feel like it's overpriced and it underperforms if you want super high-end gaming performance. If you do, X3D CPUs are really the only way to go here until we get Nova Lake X3D from Intel later in 2026, possibly early 2027, and then we'll have Zen 6, either late this year or early next year with another X3D CPU, hopefully. A 9800 X3D is tough with the game bundle. It's tough to look at the 7800 X3D, by the way, if you're thinking, what about that? If you value the game bundle, then the 7800 X3D price makes absolutely no sense. At $384, it would have to be way cheaper than that. 7500 X3D is an interesting stop if you want to try and save a little bit of money and don't care about the Crimson Desert game bundle. But honestly, I think the 9800 X3D is where I would go right now, or the 9850 X3D if you just have to have every last drop of gaming performance. If you're a hybrid production and gaming person, the 9950 X3D, even though it's at the bottom of the list in terms of price to performance, it is super high performance in both those categories, so I would pick that up. And I'd say Intel, maybe you just got to adjust your pricing a little bit. Otherwise, high-end is still owned by Ryzen. It's time to play everyone's favorite game. Should you buy now or should you wait? Well, honestly, there's 2 reasons to wait, and there's probably more reasons to buy now, but let's go through them. The first reason to wait, obviously, Intel, Nova Lake, and their Nova Lake X3D CPUs are supposedly rumored to be launching at the end of 2026. But I will say, I could see with the RAM crisis and other crises out there, them getting pushed back the way that the Arrow Lake refresh got pushed back. We were expecting these CPUs at CES, and I think we were really expecting them in the fall of last year. And for whatever reason, they've been pushed back. So I wouldn't necessarily count on them launching in late 2026. The other one is obviously we're waiting for Zen 6. And I will say, typically we get the non-X3D parts first, and then like 4 or 5 months later, we get the X3D part. So if you're waiting for Zen 6 X3D, you might be waiting for quite a while here. And again, there's no guarantee that we're going to get it this year. They did put out a roadmap. AMD put out a roadmap showing Zen 6 this year. However, it could just as easily be their EPYC CPUs, their server CPUs, basically, and we'll get desktop Zen 6 sometime next year in the new year. And they could see them pushing it back if for no other reason than due to see if RAM prices might come down. So, and RAM prices are another potential reason to wait, though I do think they're going to improve steadily over the course of the year. I don't know if we're going back to 2025 anytime soon. So let's talk about why you should absolutely be buying right now. And I feel pretty strongly about this one. We are seeing really insane combo deals out there that bring RAM prices back to 2025 pricing. In some cases, as we went through in our recent build video, the RAM's free. Free RAM, 32 gigabyte kit of RAM, with the value of everything they're throwing in the combo deal, even discounting some things that I didn't like in there, free RAM. It was really, really crazy. So check out those combo deals linked down in the video description. I'm expecting Intel to also participate in the combo deals, fingers crossed, and I will link them in the video description. We will post some of the best ones out there. So if you want to do 270K build or 250K build, I think you will be able to find some good combos out there. And right now, AMD's clearly feeling some price incentive. They've cut some prices on like the 7600X. They've cut some prices on some other CPUs out there. So just, I would focus in right now. And we've seen people get burned time and time again. Look at the people who thought they were waiting for the 50 Super Series. Whoops. That turned out to be a massive mistake. I think in this environment, this is the old, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, right? What you have right here is worth whatever, double what you think you might have in the future. I would go ahead and take the option right now and build, because it's a good time. We've got some good games coming out. We got GTA 6 possibly later this year. I think it's a good time to get into gaming, and it's a good time in terms of value. Remember to check out everything linked in the video description. I've got the RAM combo deals at Newegg. I've got the RAM combo deals at other retailers in the outside the US. The spreadsheet, check that out. And I've got the CPU spreadsheet along with the links for the various CPU benchmarks that we looked at today. Also, if you got value out of this video, remember, give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel, especially this guy right here, who some of you folks know had to go to the vet this weekend. He's feeling much, much better. Maybe let me know if you want me to do a health update for Mr. Bear here, who's just completely out and asleep. If you're looking for more cool content, check out our best PC builds 2026 video. We went through 3 different levels of builds here, starting at $1,000 and going up to $1,400 and $2,200 using the insane RAM combo deals. Check them out, and we will catch you on the next one.